you in need of legal assistance? Look no further than the Prue Law Office. Our experienced attorneys specialize in family law, criminal defense, and personal injury cases. We are dedicated to providing personalized and compassionate representation to our clients. Located on the square in Waynesville, just across the street from the courthouse, call us today at 573-774-6444 or by email at pruelaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Prue Law Office, your trusted legal partner in Waynesville.
What's nice about this, now you can see all of us. You'll see the delay be a buffer right now. Can you hear me all right? It's a little loud. I'll turn it down. Let me shut this down. I always forget to turn off the sound. So that's how we look right now. Mute. There we go. And the bottom left, you actually see on the YouTube viewers, we've got 2, which is very popular. And if you wave at the camera over there, there's it. Then we have Regina Utley, independent candidate for Pulaski County Sheriff, here in the office with us. Let us change the view real quick to
Are you in need of legal assistance? Look no further than the Prue Law Office. Our experienced attorneys specialize.
There we go. Much better. Regina, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Or you bet. Pull the microphone a little bit closer to you. Whatever one you want. Yeah, that's the better mic right there.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, I think so. If not, somebody will tell me upstairs. If you're listening at home or watching today, text me on the number on the screen or phone me if you can't hear us, because sometimes things just go bad. Make sure everything's working out. It seems to be working fine. So what's his name? Murphy will take over. He'll come aboard, and I try to blame the cat. So
Is that the cat's name? Murphy?
that's right. You got Goose and Lady. Lady's my executive producer, and Goose is the sound technician, because he got demoted when we had sound issues last time. So, but he's making a rebound. So
Okay, he's working his way back then.
make sure I got this on. Tap your mic for me. I don't know why that's so soft. Try that one. Let's use that one. Swap those around. Right underneath your chin. There we go. Much gooder. So Regina, are you the first independent candidate for sheriff?
I think so.
Really?
I don't recall one.
How about first female?
Yes.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, before we get started, is this your first election?
It is.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, coming in hot too. Right there after the primaries are done, and all the attention's now, instead of on a 10 or out of 5 or 6, is all just the two of you.
Yeah.
And we had Stacy here last week. Thank you so much, Stacy. Stacy is a sponsor of the show as well. What motivated you to run for sheriff, especially not just run for sheriff, but as an independent? I understand my personal feelings toward the party system, but what made you go that route?
Well, I never even considered running for sheriff.
Right.
It was in the 25 years. It wasn't a thing I'd considered. It's a lot of work.
Right.
It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot that comes around with a lot of responsibility. However, out in the public all the time, every day, people are asking, hey, what do we do with this? There's only Republicans running.
Right.
If you're not a Republican and you don't vote the Republican ticket, they didn't feel like they had a vote.
And I respect that.
So I said, I heard this and I heard it and I thought about it. Well, once I found out this was an option to run as an independent,
Right.
I put it some serious thought. And I thought, can you do this? You know, you go to work, you go home, you lock yourself in your house, you're not out for public view. You know, is this something you think you can follow through on? And me and my husband talked about it and talked about it and talked about it to the point to where I almost ran out of ran out of time to get signatures.
I knew it was at
It
the
was quick.
last minute deal.
It was a last minute deal. It wasn't something I took lightly.
Right.
There was a lot of thought, a lot of conversations, and I just coming out of my comfort zone, I think, was
Sure.
the biggest thing that I had to do. However, I felt it was necessary to give people what they were asking for. They wanted to feel like they were being heard.
Yeah.
So there's no other motivation other than giving people what they wanted. They needed this. They felt they needed this.
Sure.
You know, they wanted to have a decision in who was running this county, who was in charge of the sheriff's department, and just not have to wait for the next election and hopefully another candidate on another ticket ran.
I got you. I respect that. I know we're closely watching, and the word spread fastly. And we'll get to. We got some questions, but we'll get to those. We'll hit the questions and answers at the end of the show. Let's go over your background a little before just tell us about yourself. Let's say that for somebody that's never met you before, and you're at their door and you're asking for their vote. What are you going to tell them?
I'm a transplant. That's
Right.
what I refer. I came to Missouri in '97 with my husband at the time, who was military. He was active duty. My kids were old enough to be somewhat self-sufficient, so I
Sure.
could work on a career, and I chose to go into law enforcement. There's a whole backstory to that. Not a pretty one, but it's a good one. And I started doing. I went to the academy. While I was at the academy, I worked for Pulaski County Sheriff's Department as a jailer. Once I graduated the academy, I was commissioned, and I was their transport officer. I was able to find a job closer to home, which was with St. Robert PD.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just from there and working with Pulaski County Ambulance District simultaneously,
Right.
I got lucky. I found two careers I loved. So technically, I've never worked a day in my life.
I see you worked on post too.
Yes.
Okay. Well, where'd you work on post?
I started as a contract instructor with Battelle,
Okay.
working at the chemical school,
Oh,
teaching
wow. That takes me back because I was there too.
we were teaching their CBRN classes
Right.
for the CST teams that they had stood up for biological, nuclear, radiological, environmental, things like that. We taught them the hazmat, the plugging and patching.
Gotcha.
We ran them on STXs and through their FTXs. It was an 8-week course. That was for 3 years. That was actually when I first got my commission with county, was in
Okay.
2003. It was when I left St. Robert Police Department and started working there. And once the contract ended,
As they always do.
as they always do, I went to the sheriff's department. I was still a reserve there.
Okay.
Sheriff King was like, "Hey, you spent enough time here. I got a spot open. You want a job?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Heck
Yeah,
yes,
that would be
I do.
nice. So actually, I spent several years working as a reserve.
Sure.
And temporary contract came down to teach at the MP school. And that was a year-long contract.
Right.
So I would teach at the MP school. I'd teach the AIT students their garrison duties. And then I would go to work for the sheriff's department at night.
Gotcha. Civilian education.
Civilian education.
Now, what's your civilian education background? I ask everybody, all my victims of this.
I didn't graduate high school. I did get my GED.
Okay.
I do have over 100 and something hours of a college education. I'm 10 hours short of a bachelor's in business.
It's not wrapped up and packaged yet.
No.
Okay.
No, I took the accelerated classes, online classes.
Okay.
So after 3 years of this, I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. I had 1 year left to go, and I just haven't went back and completed it.
St. Robert PD. I was going to mention who's when I actually worked Homeland Security with Monroe Nickel. I don't know if you know that name.
I do not.
We started up the Office of Homeland Defense at the time, but that's where every gray whisker is showing up in my face. That tells you how old I'm getting. It feels like it. We talked about your background. We talked about your resume a little bit. We talked a little about your law enforcement specific background. Let's dig into that a little bit. You started out where as for law enforcement?
The Cleve County Sheriff's
Okay.
Department is where I was when I got my
Transport?
first commission. Transport and jail.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, and then
St. Robert.
okay, is that just a general patrolman?
Yes.
Okay, and then Sheriff's Department?
Yes, I was a reserve at
Okay.
the Sheriff's Department.
Now, you can work at the Sheriff's Department now.
I do.
Okay, and I understand, and I think everybody would definitely understand there's some things you can't talk about. If I'm going to ask you a question, just tell me, shut the hell up. We're going to move on to the next question. Next question, please. Don't be shy about that.
Gotcha.
But, and I don't know if you listened to the other podcast we had with the Republican candidates at the time for the primary, but I always asked them, what are the biggest challenges do you think is facing our Sheriff's Department named Pulaski County at this time, and how would you address them as sheriff? Understanding without, we're not bashing Jimmy or anybody else, but, people are going to ask you this when you come to the door, what's bad and how are you going to fix it?
I think the worst thing that we face in this day and time is our relationships and trust with the community.
Right. Oh, different answer.
I think there's always issues, there's always crimes.
Right.
However, at the end of the day, to fix those issues and to solve those crimes, a lot of times we depend on the public and their information. So you have to rebuild those relationships, and you have to build that trust. And they have to know you're going to take the information that they're giving you and do something with it.
That's a great answer. One of the issues I was harping on, not only with the candidates, was with the commissioners they were down here talking about. I was transparency. To find any kind of information out of this county office seems to me an effort and futility sometimes. Every office has its own Facebook page. Every office, every chief, department head or whatever has, and you're trying to find information and you can't. The web page is like antiquated beyond belief, and it's not being exploited. And I'm a tech guy, obviously. I kind of like my technology stuff, so I see these things. And how would you tie in technology to improving this transparency and responsiveness when communicating with the public? How would you approach that?
Well, with technology and the way things are changing, social media is your number one tool. If truth be told, we no longer have printed newspapers.
Right.
We don't have journalists that are going out, on crime scenes, accident scenes, doing interviews. So it's social media is your number one tool, and if you can use it and you have the knowledge on how to use it, you can make it work for you very well. And I'm still learning.
Sure.
I'm still learning. I get excited over manual typewriters. So catching up with the day, and if the other half of it is too, there are so many people out there that have more knowledge in areas than you do. Find them.
Sure.
Utilize them. Let them excel.
And there's no use in reinventing the wheel.
No, never.
No. Well, that's good. That's good to know. That's one thing that I've been harping on and I've been frustrated with. I wish we had one central button I could push for information that would rather me trying to pull it, the information, but explicit information, whether it becomes knowledge, and they push it towards me rather than me having to find it. And we brought up the fact with the commissioners using the OEM's emergency management office's speed dial thing they got now.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to see the Sheriff's Department use that yet. Not saying they haven't, but why wouldn't they? Are there any thoughts on that as a resource?
I don't have anything.
You don't know answer that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but sometimes these things pop in my head.
No, that's fine because Hector, bless his heart, he works very hard.
Oh yeah, and it's a great tool.
He is a great tool. Between his schedule, I think we've been able to meet twice.
Oh wow.
So I know they have emergency management meetings.
Right.
And I'm hoping things are slowing down enough to where we can start attending those and pulling that information. But I know a lot of it he does use for weather alerts and, give the community enough time to take care of things they need to take care of in case of an environmental emergency.
And I was definitely thinking about, sheriff's got bad stuff happen, prison breaks, et cetera, and exploiting every capability that we have to inform the public might be a tool. Same with the commissioners. I was telling them when you got road stoppages or bridge construction, put a note out to the public. This bridge is closed, yada, yada, yada. You're done. You've informed 50,000 people with the click of a button rather than waiting for somebody to find a Facebook page. You'll hear me circle back to that all the time. I had to go find the Facebook page. So thank you so much. Now, I've met with two of the commissioners, one soon to be former, and I know Gene very well. How would you work with the county commissioners and other local government offices in the county to ensure effective law enforcement and public safety services? Now, that's about as broadly painted as I could give.
Okay.
Talk to me about how you'd work with the commissioners and to give the public the best you can if you become sheriff, and how to make the department the best you can.
In my world, typically, when I bring a problem to somebody else, I try to at least have a solution,
Right.
and then work off of that. Because if you just take a problem without a solution, everybody's like, so what are you going to do about it?
Sure.
Well, here's the problem. Here's a solution I've come up with. Do you have any other thoughts or ideas or any other avenues we could look at to
Right. Be part of the solution rather than
the problem?
becoming another problem
Correct.
for somebody else to handle. Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, priorities. Priorities is a big thing. What would you consider your top priorities and policy proposals regarding crime prevention, community policing, and building trust between the sheriff's office and local residents where there is none or it's suffering?
It is suffering.
You would know. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm SRPD all the way.
Yeah.
And they're right up the road. Nobody comes down and bothers me. But when we got 2 deputies patrolling the entire county, and feedback from the campaign primaries was that there's so many people don't even know who the sheriff is in the county. I mean, I just find that dumbfounding, but just surprising. How are you going to build that back? What's going to be your approach? Broad strokes or fine strokes? Up to you.
There's a lot of ways to do that.
Right.
It's going to take a lot of different ways to figure out. There's not going to be one right answer.
Yeah.
One answer may work for one group set, and another would be for another. But at the end of the day, it's letting them know that you're listening to them.
Right.
And when you tell them you're going to do something, at least try.
Feedback circle. I mean, you come back and let them know you did something. Yeah, close the loop.
Yeah. Yes. So, that falls back on transparency.
Sure.
However, I don't want to excuse any behaviors or anything.
Sure.
There are some situations and some incidents and some investigations that we can't just be 100% transparent on.
Sure.
Because there's a whole process on courts and sentencing. So we have to be careful that we don't get caught up in the middle of that and create problems with that.
I have learned, talking with the other candidates prior to the primaries, was that it's a very complex issue, and it can't peel back the layers on a case. Sometimes you can't even peel it back. You just have to say, trust me, I'm on it. I can't talk about it, but you're just going to have to trust me.
Correct.
Okay.
However, again, you're asking them to trust you.
Sure.
And they don't know you.
Right. That's a good point.
So you're in a catch-22 at the same time.
Well, how are you going to get them to know me if I'm a deputy?
Well, I spend quite a bit of time out on the road. So sometimes I'm in my office trying to get things caught up and take care of things, but I'm still on the road.
I don't remember if you mentioned it. What you're doing right now is you are the
road lieutenant.
Okay, road lieutenant.
And revamping the jail.
Okay.
So, I've got inmates that I have to keep my word to.
Right.
That's just what I do. I'm not, and if I make a promise, I'm going to tell you what I did to try to fulfill it.
Right. Other count on that, because that circle of trust breaks.
It does.
And it's very fragile.
It is very fragile, and it's very hard to get back.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, how would your prior experience and qualifications, whether it be in law enforcement or other fields, prepare you for the role of sheriff? How do you feel like you're going to come? I have to caveat with saying I don't think anybody's ready to be sheriff until they're the sheriff. But how are you going to use your background, your education, your qualifications, your KSAs, for lack of a better term, to prepare you to execute the job of sheriff?
Well, I can't. As sheriff, you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
You have to have a group of people behind you.
Right.
Or not even behind you, but next to you.
Right.
Because it takes more than one person.
Yeah.
It takes a village to raise a child. So we're just going to put it in those terms. So the best thing to do is to find those that enhance the things that you want to change, that has the knowledge on how to get there to do it. Because I'm not going to have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers. But I know people that have the answers. I just have to ask the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. Thank you so much. Officer training. Now, I've got my civilian hat on from my time over there and the other place across the fence line over there. And one of the biggest problems that seemed like coming up through the ranks as a civilian in the military was that the budgets were so tight when it came to mandatory training or training of personnel. I don't know if it's the same way down the sheriff's department, but how are you going to, one, handle any training shortfalls when the budget is so spread thin? How are you going to overcome that capability gap?
Well,
if it is a gap, you would know better.
There training. You can never get enough training.
Right.
There's never enough training. But the one thing that you can do, and what you were giving the opportunity to do, is send people to specialized training. Have them take the train the trainer or the instructor's courses and bring them back to train everybody else.
Yes, definitely a money saver.
It is a money, yeah.
And you can't have the whole department going off the training.
No, no, you cannot.
Same thing. We talked about that accountability. We'll talk about the
Opioid.
Yeah, that's the word. Opioid challenges and plague that we get facing Pulaski County. First thing first, day one in the office, you settle down, you're getting your breath. You're new sheriff. What's your first step? What's your first approach to the opioid crisis?
Well, the first approach is to bring as many people in with information as you can, and then build teams to go out there.
Right.
You know, and that goes back to the public.
Right.
If you see it, say something. If you've got information, give it to us. We can work it to where we don't have to put your name into it.
Right.
It's harder.
Sure.
But it's possible. You just work harder at it. People talk about drug task force. They are a very efficient tool. However, at the same time, they have the same struggles as every other agency.
Sure.
They're shorthanded too.
Sure.
And the drug problem is so much bigger than what we are. I mean, and we can go after what we're here. You know, you follow up on property crimes because typically things that are being stolen are being sold or traded.
Yeah.
So find those people.
Their drug.
Find those people too
Right.
at the same time.
I think that was echoed by one of the candidates prior to the primaries. It was just it's the circle. You know, if you find the property crimes, you're going to find most likely somebody suffering from drug addiction and stuff like that.
Yes. And we need more resources for rehab.
Yeah. Now, would that fall underneath the sheriff's department or within that more of a like an NGO?
Now we can provide the information.
Right.
And we do.
Right.
We direct people on where to go.
Right.
We have access to Compass Health.
Right.
So they come to us in situations where we may need them, whether it's for rehabs or for mental illnesses or things like that. That is a good resource that we have utilized.
You bring up a good topic, mental health. Now, you're a deputy or a lieutenant down there as we speak, and you work with some of the finest of Pulaski County. You guys are on the streets, beating the streets. What is your approach now, and what will it be to ensuring that the availability of resources to the deputies and staff of the sheriff's department are made available to them for mental health support? Because I can't imagine whether it be you or anybody else have gone something that you don't want to talk about, traumatic, PTSD related. How do we ensure that the resources, the people that are serving in our sheriff's department, have those resources available to them if they need it?
They're the same resources we use for.
Is it?
Yes, we call the same people.
Oh, okay.
And they come down. Actually, we have the CIT meetings once a month.
Which is?
Critical incident training you did.
Okay.
And during those conversations, we talk about different citizens that may need extra services.
Right.
There's a multitude of different agencies involved in this. There's the Department of Mental Health, Department of Aging, Family Services, law enforcement. We get together.
You're right.
And, if there's somebody that we know that needs services but is refusing services, we have conversations. They get approached. People don't give up on them. They change locations.
Right.
We find them again. And, so we have it. and we have the resources for it. The problem is when we get these people and they want help, sometimes it takes 6 to 9 months to get them somewhere for that because there's no availability.
Yeah, there's not infinite resources.
There is not.
Yeah.
We're at the starting gate.
Sure.
Some days we just can't get to the finish line.
And there comes a point when you got limited resources, such as personnel in the sheriff's department, where you have to basically turn the page, and you have to turn it over to the group that handles this and continue on about doing the business of the sheriff's department, which does not always include mental health treatment, but making those resources available, or at least pointing them in the right direction.
Yes.
Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Collaboration, teamwork. We live in a society of open borders, that being Pulaski County. So we don't have closed borders with our county. So what's coming in our county is went through some other county. What steps would you take to build up collaboration and teamwork relationships with your counterparts that surround Pulaski County and the other counties?
I haven't really thought about it to that extreme. I try to stick with Pulaski County. We've got a new resource. We have a canine and a new canine handler.
Mm-hmm.
Getting them put to work.
Sure.
On the interstate. That's where the corridor is. That's where it's coming and going.
Right.
To take that, it's going to take the local agencies that are on I-44, Waynesville and St. Robert.
And the other counties.
Hopefully
they can catch them before they get here.
Or we can pass on the information.
Sure.
And they can keep an eye on them when they get to the other side.
Okay, great. I'm going to break for questions. Who we got first? Can you see the question? I can't scroll down and look. You may not see one. We talked about your commission. What is Kenny Nelson? Kenny, thank you so much for your question. What is your experience in a leadership role? I'm going to leave that open to, he didn't specify within law enforcement, just leadership role in general. What's your experience?
Well, I've had supervisor roles.
Right.
I was the chief of Crocker for a little over a year, for almost 2 years actually.
Right.
But as you get, you don't have a major that doesn't work his way up the ranks and knows everything by the time he becomes a full board colonel. You learn. Every day is a learning experience.
Sure. Are you planning, I don't know if this is applicable, but it's Kenny again. We'll try to get to all your questions. This is a lot of questions. Are you going to hire a professional public information officer so you can release the correct information in a timely and legal manner? You have any idea to speak? You don't have to answer that. He wants to know if you're going to hire a public affairs officer for the sheriff.
That will be somebody's task, yes.
Okay.
We wouldn't have the funds just to hire for that.
Right, as long as you got the resources.
As long as we got the resources.
Tom Lowry, thank you so much for your question. Next week it will be a public information whether or not you voted in the primary election. I don't understand the question. Oh, here we go. Can you share if you pulled a Republican or Democratic ballot, or do you want to answer that?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay. Ryan Hicks. You want to talk about your lawsuit?
I can't answer that.
Okay. No question about the lawsuit, which was why I kind of expected. Shannon Cotner. One thing I will say about Regina, she is not afraid to work. She will do what it needs to be done, even if she has to do it herself. That's kudos. Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
They can be heartless or they can be beneficial. Well, you talked a little bit about the jail. Tell us about, Kenny's got a good question. How are you going to revamp the jail?
Well, we're already in the process.
Right.
We've been doing this for several months. We were down to limited jailers. We've changed that. We've hired jailers to where we only have 2 open slots left.
How many out of how many?
14.
Okay.
Yes.
I had no idea how many was in that building.
Yes, there's slots for 14 jailers.
Okay.
One of them is the jail administrator, and she takes care of all the paperwork, which We brought somebody down there just to focus on that because
Okay.
that's a big thing. That's where our documentation is, and we have to keep up with it, and we have to maintain it.
We're talking about legal documentation.
Yes, everything we do, everything we write.
This isn't like Doug Fowler's desk here. This is
No. We've utilized the rec room that was downstairs. Now, the jail that, going from the original jail to this jail takes a lot of adjustment because of the difference in sizes. And this jail was structured to where your inmates could be moved from their pods to the rec room
right.
while they are being watched from like what we would call a tower. So with that put into place, we've opened the rec room for them to have their rec. And we brought back in-person visitations. They had tablets prior. They still have tablets to where they could video chat with their family members and their friends. But we restarted the visitation.
Mm-hmm.
I have over 1,000 books where we're trying to recreate.
I've seen the collection effort for it.
Yeah, so we're recreating their library. I just had a meeting with different people that want to come in and do ministry, Bible studies. So we're setting up schedules to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Our jailers are learning quickly.
Right.
You know, we're bringing them in. They're going through a constant training. Every day's training. So we've got more people there.
Yeah.
We're still struggling with the schedule sometimes because people want to take time off, and I can't.
Somebody's got to be at the jail.
Yes, and if somebody wants time off, I have a hard time saying no because they earn it.
Sure.
They earn it.
Now,
So I work. Sometimes I work to cover their schedules.
Sure. Which bosses do. You know, it's sad to say, but that's what we do. Oh, the train left me at the station. Sorry.
But yeah, we're doing a lot of things to make things smoother and more organized in the downstairs for the COs and I call them residents,
COs.
inmates, however you want to talk. You know, whatever you prefer.
Whatever your preferred title is.
Yes.
Jeffrey Brownlee, how many deputies would you run per rotation? You can answer that one or not. I don't know if that's like intel but how many?
Would I run?
How many deputies would you run per rotation?
Well, with the schedule full and everybody's working and I don't have anybody on light duty, for the most part, we would have 3.
3?
3.
And that's covering the entire county.
Yes. And that's only through certain parts of the day. Now, would I like to find more ways to hire more deputies?
Sure.
I really would. And that's another thing I've been looking into also.
Gotcha.
I don't have the answer to that yet because I haven't gotten to that step. But it is a question in my head on how do I get more deputies on the road.
And you may have answered this already. This is from our YouTube viewer, home, ending in home 08. What would you do to make sure someone actually calls or shows up when someone calls the sheriff's department? I know several times when they have been called and the person reporting never has even had a phone call back. You may have talked about that, but maybe you could address it again.
I don't think I've talked about that. First, we would have to get the information that they never showed up, and then take a look at why.
Right.
And then correct the problem.
Right. Okay. Dana Blainer, how do you feel about the sheriff's department handling those fentanyl poisons in our county? What will you do to make changes to the process?
Handling fentanyl. Does he mean handling? Does he mean
She means, how do you feel about the sheriff's department is handling? How do you feel the sheriff's department is handling the fentanyl poisonings in our county, the drug overdoses and the sales?
We take them very seriously, but that goes back to what I've already addressed.
Right. Just you got resources
and just working it.
Right. Work the case. Frank Equate. The jail admin person is detectives. Well, we're not going to get into that. Is there a conflict of interest?
There is not.
There's not. Okay. If a deputy or employee of the county is having a mental health crisis on duty, what do you intend to handle such a situation, or how would you intend to handle it?
We're going to make phone calls to the resources I've already stated and pull that deputy off the road, or the dispatcher off the radio, or the jailer out of the jail
Yeah.
and bring somebody else to cover for that.
Gotcha. Making the resources available.
Yes.
Is there would you say a stigma still associated with mental health issues down at the sheriff's department, or is that hopefully not as bad as what it used to be, at least with the military? If you're having a mental health issues, you didn't want to say nothing, and it got to the point where you couldn't share, and next thing you know.
I'd like to say no, because the ones that did have an issue did bring it up, and we
Right.
did provide what they needed.
Okay.
The time off that they requested and felt that they needed.
Right.
So it's changing. It's a slow change,
Sure.
and people are building up more courage more and more every day. Because, like you brought up, a long time ago, we just compartmentalized everything, and
It wasn't cool to
the
show
old
your
dogs
feelings.
have found out
Sure.
it's not a good thing. So we encourage it for them to speak up. And if you watch a person closely enough, even if they are afraid to say something, if you watch them closely enough, they're going to tell you in their actions or their lack thereof, or the change in their demeanor, or the change in their attitude. You
Sure.
just have to pay attention.
Yeah. Be aware of your situation and your people.
Yes.
Now, before we open up the question and answer and telephone lines, and everybody, the telephone number is at the bottom of the screen, 408 or 573-408-0339. I'm sorry, it's kind of, let me move that number for you so you can see it. We haven't got a call in a long time. Move that. I can't see what I'm doing until the buffer clears. There we go. Now, if you got if I had 50,000 viewers watching me tonight, and everyone were registered voters from Pulaski County, what would you say in a nutshell? What would you want them to know about you?
What would I want them to know? That's kind of a hard question to answer.
I would say it's like the closing interview, or last question of an interview to Pulaski County voters before they go to vote. What do you want them to know about you that nobody knows, or not secret stuff, but just about your work ethic, your mentality, why you do the things you do?
My work ethic is instilled in me
Right.
from my mother and my grandparents, and it's a family thing.
Right.
But everything I do, every day, I do with my heart.
Right.
And every night when I'm done, I can look myself in the mirror and say, you did the best you could do, and you did what you thought was right. You did the right thing. And as long as I can wake up every day knowing when I go out there, I'm going out there to make a difference, and I go to bed at the end of every day
Right.
and saying, I did everything that I could do. I'm going to get up tomorrow, and I'm going to start all over.
Sometimes that's the hardest thing.
Sometimes
There's so many videos out there on TikTok and YouTube, people crying in the shower. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. It kind of begs the question, you're obviously successful. You're a lieutenant down there in charge of a department. And I don't know if I'd actually directed, but why do you want to be sheriff? I mean, that everything
I wanna make
from
changes.
JB, from who's the other sheriff I interviewed?
there was
Down in Texas. He's in Texas right now.
Ron Long.
Ron Long.
Sheriff Long.
They lived in the office for a year. The first year they were sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
And for peanuts, compared to what the work you're doing. I mean, why would you want that? What are you going after that nugget for?
Because I think there are some things that we can make a difference
Right.
on. And it goes back to building bonds and,
Right.
and relationships. And, years ago I went to the sheriff's department, and we built a lot of new bonds,
Right.
with different agencies. And I look around today, and I know the people have changed, but the
Right.
bonds aren't there. The new people coming up aren't going out and meeting and hanging out and talking and venting to each other.
Sure.
And I'd like to get that back.
Right.
I'd like for the boots on the ground to know that there's so much more to us than what the public views us as.
I always look at it. You're my sheriff. Whoever you, Stacy, whoever it is, you're my sheriff. Whether you be president, my sheriff, you're still mine. You belong to me because I live in your county and you support me. And whoever wins, that's to my mentality. And I think if we've seen more of that, we take ownership and we take care of our sheriff's department, but that goes to communication and transparency. And I think if steps can be taken to improve those nuggets will carry a lot of weight.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of time, we see people on their worst days.
Sure.
I want them to see us on their good days too.
Right.
So they know that, law enforcement gets dehumanized.
Right.
And a lot of other agencies, not agencies, but jobs.
Right.
People just dehumanize you because you're there in the worst moment of their life. Yeah. So if you show up and they see you in public on a good day and you have a different type of conversation, then they see you differently.
Right. And it's got to be so hard with 3 deputies, how many square miles, 18,000 miles of road?
There's over 500 square miles.
No, it's 500 square miles and thousands of miles of road. 50,000 people, 3 on the road at a time.
Not at all.
Not always. Yeah. But you're trying to get a minimum of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough job. That's a tough job.
It is a tough job.
Yeah.
And it's even harder sometimes to fill it because that goes back to what I just said. Every agency in the nation is running into shortages. Yeah. And they're working on being shorthanded.
And a lot of those agencies have deeper pockets.
Yes, they do.
Little old Pulaski County in Waynesville, Missouri. Let's talk about we're going to take a quick station break for a commercial for the bail payer. Say hey to Mark Prue. Let's see if it comes up.
Are you in need of legal assistance? Look no further than the Prue Law Office. Our experienced attorneys specialize in family law, criminal defense, and personal injury cases. We are dedicated to providing personalized and compassionate representation to our clients. Located on the square in Waynesville, just across the street from the courthouse, call us today at 573-774-6444 or by email at pruelaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Prue Law Office, your trusted legal partner in Waynesville.
And we are back. Now we got some more questions. Regina is going to stick around and answer a few more questions. Frank, thank you so much for your question. What are her major accomplishments when she was the chief of police at Crocker?
Right after I first got there, they had wanted to, or had talked about putting the sales tax, the law enforcement sales tax on the ballot, which had failed
for Crocker.
For Crocker. I told them I could get it passed for them, and I did.
Oh, wow.
And it consisted of changing their view of the police department, and it was successful. The bigger cases that happened in Crocker with the theft of people's property, actually everything they owned, we caught them, got most of their property back.
Right.
It's just kind of hard to say on everything. We
sure.
Brought in body cams.
Right.
So body cams were made available. Increased the wages.
Right. How much revenue did the tax? You're not sure?
I don't think any of the money had ever come in prior to me leaving.
Yeah, it does take a while for it to go. Because we was talking about that, the new tax changes that come from this primary. Mm-hmm. Retention. How would you retain deputies currently working for Pulaski County?
Well, that goes back to trying to increase their wages and finding ways in the budget to decrease other spending.
Now, somebody tried to explain the law enforcement tax to me and the original intent. And
you're going to get me in trouble.
No, I just want the facts. That's because we were generating like $2 million, but I know the jail came in high.
It did.
Yeah, and so we got a higher bill to pay. Does that basically consume the law enforcement tax?
It consumes over $1 million of it, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And salaries all around across the force. Because I hear things and people come and tell me things, just like on Facebook. Would you look at I'm not even going to touch about that. I'm going to leave that one be. Let me see if I got any questions on the phone. If anybody wants to call in now, 573-408-0339. If I can't get my facts straight, I ain't going to ask. I don't want to sound more of an idiot than I already am. I got some questions before. We already talked about retaining deputies. In your opinion, in reality, whatever you want to call it, what's the main priority of the sheriff's department?
The main priority?
Main priority.
The courts is the main priority of the sheriff's department.
Okay. Like 1, 2, 3, courts,
jail, and then
the
road.
law enforcement on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not going to talk about the lawsuit. I knew that was going to come up. I seen a copy of it. I keep aware of those things. And I didn't expect you to be able to talk. That's all I got. Anybody else got any questions for Regina here? She's been a great visitor with us, and I hope you will come back. Work environment plays a big role in morale and retention, I would think. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, if you've got toxic individuals, they're going to bring everybody down with them. So, yeah, I can't even disagree with that.
Right. Can't argue with logic.
No, you cannot.
Have you had a chance to look at the budget?
Some of it.
Okay.
You know, I can't do any of this while I'm working.
Well, of course not.
So that takes priority.
So instead of sitting there with Doug Fowler, you could have been going through pages and pages of beans and counting them.
Yeah, so when I do have time sitting at the house, okay. I go through that. I look at things. I've got questions.
Right.
So my plan is to set up a time with the county clerk and go have these conversations.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Coming to being important. Well, I can't get that to you, Dana, because we're going to wrap it up. We've been on the air for about an hour, and Facebook gets etchy and sketchy when after a while. But first of all, I want to thank Virginia for coming in today. I really appreciate it. Oh, there's a good question. Are you acting chief deputy?
No.
Or are you going to have a chief deputy? That's going to come up sooner or later.
It's going to come up sooner.
You may not have an answer for me right now.
I do not.
Okay, that's all right.
I do have an idea.
I have an idea, but
we're working it out.
Okay, that's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying wait. Just wait. We have an answer later.
Well, that's like I said. I can't answer all the questions. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of good questions, and there's a lot of good answers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bad answers.
Well, sure.
So you want to be careful in the decision that you're making because you want to stick with the good answers.
I could not agree more. I want to thank everybody for all the questions you gave us tonight. It just filled up the thread, and maybe Regina will chime in later. You'll be on my Facebook page, and you can chime in if you want to answer later. Or you can just refer your questions to Regina's Facebook page. You'll have a link to on our page and go back and forth and get your questions answered. I hope you'll come back. We'll dig in deeper on some of those questions we weren't able to get to. Thanks to everybody else, especially Prue Law and Prue Law Office down in Waynesville for sponsoring this and make this happen. And all the other sponsors, I really appreciate that. Any questions on the phone? I got the phone line open. You can be famous. 573-408-0339. You can't speak to the goose or lady. One, they don't know how to use a phone, but if not, we're going to close the door. Thanks, everybody, and thanks. Have a good night. And thank you